This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you in part by Clay Boykin Life and Business Coaching, because we all get stuck at times. For more information, visit clayboykin.com. By Janelli Bean, for fun and engaging children's books with cute and colorful characters. For more information, visit janellibean.com. And by Wise Owl Organizing, simply set up for you. Organizing consulting and clarity coaching, virtual or in person. For more information, visit wiseowlorganizing.com.
Hello world, it's me, Dennis, and welcome to another Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. My guest today is Jennifer Arthurton. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Dennis. How are you?
I'm very well. Well, when Noemi Bettis from the Podcast Connection suggested you as a guest, I jumped at it because I love your website. Old
Thank you.
Chicks Know SH asterisk T. I don't know how
Yeah.
to pronounce asterisk, but I know what that word is, and I know that it's that you know shit and you've got stuff. So tell me a little bit about the impelling to create this website and this ministry.
Ministry. That's an interesting word. I love that word. This was actually born out of my own, let's call it a midlife reinvention journey at the age of 50. So in the year leading up to my 50th birthday, I found myself divorced, unemployed, an empty nester, and I was bedridden with a stress-related illness. So pretty much all of the roles and responsibilities and how I showed up in the world was literally taken away from me in what felt like it was overnight. And after throwing myself a big old pity party for a very long time, I was like, okay, what's next? And what was running through the undercurrent of the what's next running through my mind was, oh, but you're 50. It's too old to start over. Nobody starts over at 50. This is the beginning of the end. Like I'm supposed to be riding off into the retirement sunset with on the arm of a handsome man and a pot of gold under my other arm, right? That was not my reality, not even close to my reality.
And yet that reality was written by men.
Right.
And reinforced by more than a few women.
Yeah.
But this was the narrative that we get told inside our heads. Now I'm a 74-year-old man, white man. So I have a different narrative and have had a different narrative and different privilege than women have. But then you get a chance to do this and you get a chance to stand up and get up off that bed and say, you know what? And I admire that so much. To have the courage to take that first step and to be able to do that, Jennifer, is amazing.
Well, it was interesting when I became aware of this kind of underlying thought pattern that I was in. So I had also started on a personal development and spiritual journey at this time. I was like, okay, if you don't like how your life is turning out, like you're the common thread here. You need to fix some things, right? So I was like, my life so far had got me to this point. I'm like, what do I need to change if I want it to be different? So when I caught myself in this pattern, like this undercurrent of, oh, but you're too old, nobody starts over at that age, this is the beginning of the end, all of that, I actually became kind of curious about it. And I started a blog, which is how Old Chicks Know Shit started as a blog, starting to share my thoughts, and realized that I wasn't the only one thinking that way. Like there were so many women with similar stories, and we all had the same kind of narrative going through our minds. And it was at that point that I was like, oh, listen, look, we've been conditioned by our society, by our culture, that this is the way it is, but it is not the way it has to be. Like there's so much more that I knew I wanted to do, so much more that I wanted to experience, in the world. And I was like, okay, this is an opportunity now to create life on my terms. Like up until that point, my life had been driven by shoulds, obligations, and expectations, right? And I also realized that nowhere along the way had I actually checked in to see if I was happy. I was checking the boxes of all the things that I was supposed to do. And it was like, was I truly happy? And I realized that, there was an opportunity here for me to start doing things on my terms and things that were my passion that came from inside of me, as opposed to being driven by the external world.
All right, so you're sitting there checking in. So you're pulling things out. What kinds of things are you pulling out to make you look at, now that's interesting. That's something that I might want to explore. Tell me about that process, those
Yeah.
early days as you're sitting around going,
Honestly, it was a very intuitive journey. I didn't necessarily think, okay, let me try on this career for, and see if it fits. I literally just kind of followed, so I'm also recovering from burnout at this point. Like, I'm fairly limited in the amount of energy that I have, so I couldn't go far or do much. Right. And so I would literally follow day by day, like, what do I feel like doing today? So writing was one thing that just kind of came out, and I started writing. I had never really written anything before that point, other than like a strategy deck in my corporate life. So I just started writing and then sharing that, and then starting to realize that, there's this groundswell of women who are looking for like inspiration and possibility for this next chapter, which then led me to be like, okay, there has to be stories out there. Let me go find the stories. Then it was like, well, for my own inspiration, but then I was like, I should be sharing these stories. And so it literally kind of unfolded kind of based on kind of intuitive nudges that I was following at that time. One of the other things that I did do, like a little bit before that, was to go and have coffee with as many different people from as many different walks of life as I could, and just talk to them about their journey and what they did. And like having that, being able to kind of put a voice to like what it was that I was searching for, and having those conversations actually opened doors, because I had grown up in the corporate world, and I was in a box with the same people who looked like me, thought like me, acted like me, and I had no idea what was in the realm of possibility. So when I started talking to people from different walks of life, I was like, holy, there's a whole world out here that I knew nothing about.
And so,
Yeah.
well, talk about the world. Talk about the world, because one of the things, Jennifer, that I feel so strongly about is that we are over masculine and under feminine
Oh.
in the balance in our corporate, in our governmental, in our NGOs, in our entertainment, in the decision making, at the decision making level, that we're out of balance. So
Yeah.
that we can look at Putin, or we can look at Jinping, or we can look at all the places where, or in in the United States. I don't know how it is in Canada, but it
Same.
just feels like that we're out, that this balance, that we don't have the decision makers at the table that can make the kinds of decisions for all the constituency that is out there. And that's where I feel women are so needed. I mean, I tell you, I am so over men right now. I just feel I feel like that we have taken it as far as we can, and we need the partnership to be able to go forward.
Well, I mean, I think, the beauty of having diverse voices at the table. So women are all about nurturing and relationship, right? As opposed to hunting, winning, right? And I think that that's the big difference here, is like, as women, when we're making decisions, when we're considering it, we're considering all of the viewpoints. Like, it's all about, the best for everyone and nurturing everyone involved,
Right.
as opposed to, like conquering, winning. And I think you're right. I do think that is kind of missing from what we're seeing happening in the world today, for sure.
And so I'll say that, but I'll say, okay, now here we are at one level of complexity, when going ahead and conquering the Northwest Territory, doing that we can do that. But once we get into levels of complexity where cooperation and collaboration are required for success, listening to one another, it's the absolute requirement, because things have gotten so, we're no longer in this zero sum game that says, okay, we got to get all for me and then take it from you. We got to cooperate and we are interdependent now as a species. And that's where I feel that women have such an opportunity to be able to use those skills of interdependence, communication, empathy, and work, win-win, to really to grow this synergistic pie.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I mean, and that was a big part of my journey, in my reinvention, was learning to lean into the feminine, right? Because again, I grew up in the corporate world, right? Which was all about achieve, achieve, do, conquer more, win this, right? Which actually is what led to my burnout. Like I became out of balance. Right, that ended me in the place where I basically couldn't get out of bed most days, and it took a while for me to figure that out and then come back into balance, that there there is rest involved in creation. Right, like it's not always about achieving on a timeline, right, like allowing things to come to us as opposed to going outwards, which was very much my journey. And like I was saying to you, I didn't go out and say, okay, let me go get this career. I waited to see what came from within me, and then I acted on it. Yeah.
So how does 50 plus feel? How are you learning to see the experience of your age and the experience of where you are now with all of its with all of its, I mean, what is it like?
You know, uh, honestly, I mean, I think I truly, truly believe with my whole heart that this chapter of life is the most powerful point in a woman's life. Like with 100%, like there's not a bone in my body that doubts that. And here's the thing, right? As women, we're cultured from the time we are little girls, right, to see our value in what we do for others, right? In how we look. Are we a good girl? Am I a good mom? Am I a good employee? Am I a good wife? And all of our validation and our value comes from outside of ourselves. So then we enter this chapter of life, and all the things for which we think our value has been attributed, like, so our kids are no longer here, like maybe our relationships are changing, our careers are on autopilot, maybe they're not as satisfying. Like all of that is happening, right? And we start questioning our value from an external perspective. But what we're doing is we're stepping into our value from the inside, like our internal
Yes.
focus. And we're driven in this chapter by, our intuition, right? By the feminine principles that you were just talking about. And that's powerful because those gifts, those dreams, and those desires that we have for our lives are not random, right? Like they're given to us, like they're created from our experience of, they're given to us for a reason because they're parts of us that need to be expressed, that are waiting to be heard. And so when we step into our true authentic selves in this chapter of our lives, we become more powerful than we have been yet. And we have the ability to create whatever it is that we want in this next chapter of our lives.
One of the things, I mean, one of my heroes is Nancy Pelosi. She was
Yeah.
47 years old when she began in Congress.
Yeah.
Ended up being the most powerful woman that has ever served in the United States. And with, I think she's going to be done with great honor, but that's a perfect example of what you're saying.
Yeah. 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 In fact, I just interviewed a woman on my podcast this morning who, at the age of 65, left a very, very successful corporate career to become a documentary film festival. She had never made a film in her life, did not know how, but she had always been very interested in kind of the behind the scenes and had a bit of a passion for film. So she just decided, okay, I have to honor myself and my life by at least going down this road. And so she went out and started talking to people and said, okay, I want to make a film. How do I do it? And one of the most common things that I hear on my podcast, on the interviews that I do, is that women show up in this time of life with a bit of a beginner's mindset, as in, I don't know how to do this, but I'm willing to ask for help. Right. I'm willing to start from the beginning and every day learn and, a little bit more and keep moving forward because I'm honoring my passion. Like it's coming from inside me, and they're willing to do that to get to wherever it is they want to get.
Jennifer, exactly, and that's part of the leadership that I'm seeing with the women that I'm doing, that I'm getting a chance to connect with and getting a chance to interview. And one of the things I want to ask you about is intuition. How do we grow that muscle? I see intuition as you go into the gym and I got to go on that machine and I got to try it. I got to work on it. So can you talk about how intuition shows up for you?
Yeah. So intuition really is, it's a relationship with yourself, right? And just like any relationship, it takes time to build that relationship and to build that trust within yourself. So one of the problems that we have is, as a culture, we are so busy doing, right? We're processing a million pieces of information all the time. We're doing all the things, and in the process, and especially as women, we've been put ourselves last on our list, like that part of the list that has, dust and dust balls on it, the part you never ever get to, right? Like that's where we are on our own list, right? And then when everything changes in our lives and our kids live home and we're considering what's next, we realize we are completely disconnected from who we are, right? Because we've been so busy putting everybody first that we just don't know who we are. I mean, that was me. I was lying in my bed going, okay, if I'm not a wife, if I'm not a mom, if I'm not a corporate executive, like, who am I? I had no clue. What do I want? Couldn't even answer that question because I had been so disconnected from ourselves. And so the number one thing that we need to do to get back in touch with ourselves and our intuition is to spend time with ourselves. Like silence, stillness, solitude, right? Like sit with yourself, if you're just having your coffee in the morning before the house gets up, right? Not with a book, not with your phone, not with a movie or anything. Just sit by yourself and acknowledge what thoughts come up, like maybe write them down, right? But it's a practice of kind of getting to know what's happening inside you. Like, how am I feeling today? What do I need? Right? What am I feeling called to? What's not feeling good? Like just acknowledging those thoughts inside you. And then, like you said, it's like going to the gym and it's like a repetitive motion of like spending that time every day to connect in and then learning to trust it. Start with the small things like, I feel I'm driving down the road. I really feel I should turn left. Okay, turn left. Just try it. See what happens.
Yes. And we have to do, I mean, when we think about like Las Vegas, I don't know Canada, if Canada has a Las Vegas style, but when those casinos make millions of dollars at just a 51.49. So even if my intuition, even if I can get to 52.49, if I can get to that, I'm going to be winning big because over and over. But I found that I have to practice it to
Yeah.
do that. Do you find, does your intuition come to you in a feeling? Does it come in words? Do you have a conversation? And have you been able to modify the conversation that goes on in your head? And in my life, I've really been working on the sharpness and of the conversation, the voices, some of the different voices that I have in my head, moderating them and getting more kind and gentler, actually volitionally talking to myself in a kinder voice, even when I don't feel it,
Yeah.
even when I think it's bullshit. I just go, I don't care. I'm just going to talk kindly to Dennis because I have that other highly critical voice that has been so that I've carried on and nurtured over my life.
Yeah. And I think, everybody is very, very different. And, it takes, time and practice to figure out like what is the way that you hear your intuition. Like some people, it comes in words, pictures, for me, it's just a knowing, right? Like something will come up and I'll just be like, oh, I know that that's something that I have to take action on. But I also know that I have to put myself in the place where I can even hear that knowing. So, part of my, like I have a morning routine. So part of my morning routine is, journaling. So I do some free writing sometimes and see what comes up. One of the best ways for me to get in touch with my intuition is walking in nature. So I go for a walk every morning, right? And when I'm in the forest or by the lake or wherever that's when my intuition talks to me, because it's like my mind goes quiet and then that little voice that's underneath my conscious mind can like, oh hey, I'm here, here's what I have to say to you. But I know like that doesn't just happen. Well, sometimes it does, but very, very rarely does it happen in the busyness of every day. It has to be, I have to create those times of stillness in order to be able to hear that voice.
Don't we just? And then when you step out into this and you step out into the activities, like you're building this and it feels like a movement or as I said earlier, it's like a ministry because this is what there is a I love to differentiate between religion and spirituality because in spiritual nature, I can take every single aspect of my life and put it into a spiritual vein, which is, am I moving one step closer to to the light, however I want, or am I moving one step away so I can have a journey and a journey part of that. That's the way I'm doing it. What talk about your journey?
Yeah, I think yeah, it's very similar, but like reminding myself on a daily basis that I am supported by things that I can't see. Right?
Yeah.
Like that there is guidance that's beyond what I can see, feel, and touch. Right. And that's why I create, like, I was just talking about silence, stillness, and solitude. Like those three things, or a combination of those three things, right? To get into that place, that's when I'm reminded that, oh yeah, it's not just about me. Right? Like it's not just about, like I said, everything that I can see, feel, and touch, that there is another voice at the table. And my job, my only job, is to create space for that voice so that I can hear it, and then to take action, like to trust it and take action on it. So it is like, to your point, is like making ourselves available to be closer to, right?
Yeah.
Or taking those steps to be closer to. And like I said, it's very different for all of us. Some people might find it in meditation, and sometimes
Yes.
that works for me, right? But like for me, if I'm walking in nature, or sometimes even if I'm driving with no sound, no, right, like all of a sudden stuff will just like come to me, and I have to be like, stop, okay, write it down quickly. Or on my paddleboard in the middle of the lake, right? And that's another place where my mind is completely quiet, like that conscious mind is completely quiet. And usually we have to get to a state of doing something we love, a state of joy, a state of bliss will give us that kind of quiet mind enough that the other voices can pop through.
And then if I'm what I love about what you're saying is to get out of comparisons, Dennis, because the
Oh, yeah.
minute I get into comparison mode, oh, this person's doing that, I have to find that custom created, perfect for me space. And the only way I can do that is to quiet a lot of the chatter that is going on around me. In order to do it is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. I mean, we are all individuals, individual souls on individual soul journeys, right? And so, we might be going to the same place, but the way I get there and the way that you get there might be completely different. So the point of comparison is really moot, right? And we need to trust that the journey that we are taking is exactly the journey we need, because maybe somebody else needs to hear that too. And your journey is equally important, because that's your experience and your flavor of whatever it is that we're doing. So each individual soul has an individual journey, and each one of those is equally as valuable. But it's in our ego mind where we look over and we go, oh, Joe's doing it this way, maybe I should try it that way, right? Because Joe looks like he's pretty successful. We don't really know, but Joe looks like it's working well for him, right? So I'm going to copy Joe, except for you can't be Joe, right? Because you're Dennis.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where, oh, Jennifer, I'm just so grateful that you're here and inspiring me, because I know that as I get into the place where I know that my only job is to be the most genuine Dennis as I
Yeah.
possibly can be. There is no comparison. No, there is no
Right.
competition. There is no comparison. All right.
Yeah.
So again, as a white male, that's my journey. And so one of the things that I find so inspiring is to see the courage that women are standing up around the world, whether it's in Persia and Iran,
Mm-hmm.
standing
Mm-hmm.
up, in China, standing up, here in the United States, standing up. Women are standing up and taking a place, and it's deeply inspiring to me.
It's deeply inspiring to me,
Yeah.
right? Because here's the thing, like we all need to be reminded about what's possible. And when we see other women standing up, when we see other women, going for their dreams, when we see other women doing incredible things, they're not special. Like we all have that same ability. We all have that same power. And we just, because we're what I call #human, right? We just need to be reminded, right? So every time somebody steps forward and does something, like every woman that I talk to on my podcast is just like, more inspiration, more fuel for me to, to keep stepping forward. Like on some days it's hard. Like when you're doing something, some days are just really sucky, right? And you want to quit, right? And so
Absolutely.
we just need, we need those reminders just to keep going. Okay, this is bigger than me. I have a passion that's pulling me forward. I can't tell you how many times on my journey I was like, this is too hard, I can't do it, I quit. And then 12 hours later I'm like, no, you can't quit, because this is your passion. So figure it out and get back on the horse and keep going. But so we all need those reminders, and that's why I do what I do, is because I want other women to kind of hear those things. I want other women to know that it's possible for them, right? What was possible for me is possible for them. What was possible for my podcast guests is possible for me. We're one. We're a collective. We're energetically, we're all, of the same pod. And when one of us succeeds, all of us succeeds. So yeah, it's so powerful. I get goosebumps when I think about it, to be honest.
Me too. And the neat part about it is that I have worked enough on myself to feel, to have the grace to be able to be led by women, and to
Mm,
be able to hear women, and to be able to be inspired. So even though you are inspiring women, and you are inspiring women to their best, you are doing it for me, Jennifer. You're
oh, thank
helping me
you.
to be able to do that, so that I can have those same, because I have those same, doubts, I have those same fears, and I'm
Mhm.
getting an opportunity to be able to do that. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today and giving me an opportunity to spend time with you, and to learn about you, and to be inspired by you.
It's an absolute honor to have this conversation with you. My honor.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Jennifer Arthurton. We will put all the links of the podcast down there, to your podcast, to your website, and I encourage everyone to connect with you. And I look forward to getting a chance to meet you later on down the road and say,
For
Jennifer
sure.
Arthurton, what are you up to?
For sure.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everybody, for coming on another reasonably spontaneous conversation. We will see you next time.
This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversations has been brought to you in part by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com. This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversations has been brought to you in part by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.